Welcome everybody to episode 84 of Door Tunes. See, we're kicking it out of the park these days. So I'm really glad that I've got a wonderful guest with me this week. I keep saying us all the time. Don't know why I do that.
Hey, there's two of us.
So I'd like them to introduce themselves.
Well, thank you very much. So I'm Markus Hedges. I am a composer uh, based in Brighton. Um, Typically, I write music for video games, but all sorts really. Short films, trailers, ads, whatever. But I place the focus on video games, and um, that's me really. I guess like
Fabulous.
in a very short synopsized version.
Fabulous. And something I ask quite a lot of people, I'm going to ask you today, is
Yeah.
where you are now, did you a lot of people have very different ways of how they got to where they are. So some people did it the kind of classical way, they went to university and kind of studied music, or sometimes studied completely different things. Um, how about you? How did you start your journey?
Um, so so I learned the piano from like a really young age.
Hmm.
Something that I don't know, like I had a little toy piano and a little book one day, and I actually um I think I must have been like 6 or 7, and
Hmm.
I went downstairs to my parents and I said I've learned to read this music. And what I hadn't learned to read the music, what I'd done is I'd listened to the tune that the keyboard played and learnt it by ear. And
Wow.
then I said, "Look, I'm doing it." And they were like, "Oh, do you want piano lessons?" And so we went, with I sort of went that route, and I didn't really. All I knew was that was kind of like my thing right through, secondary school, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with that.
Mm.
Everybody's sort of shooting off to university, and I want to go and be a doctor. I want to go and, do this, that, and the other. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I
Yeah.
liked playing the piano. I also really liked art as well. And and so when it came to it, I was sort of flicking through a prospectus, and I saw that people there was a course in there, and it explained that it was a course for commercial composition and music technology, and it was sort of telling me about how there were people out there that wrote music for TV ads and films and stuff
Mm.
and got paid for it. And I was like, what? Like what? Like people are writing music and getting paid for it. Like, okay, interesting. And this was around the same sort of time that I was doing my A levels, and I was really enjoying like the module where I had to write some piano music and stuff. It was
Mm.
just, you know, and so yeah, I went to uni, and I did that. And like I did my degree, and I did quite well in my degree. I got first, and I kind of thought I'd come out of university and fall into a a music job, like, and how
Kind of
and
music
how
at
naive
Stony.
I was. Yeah, right. And that just did not happen. And I was kind of a bit of a loss. I was like, I don't really know what to do here. And so the first, after a little while, actually, the first thing I managed to get myself like an internship at a music production company, and they were doing like compilation albums.
Mhm.
And essentially what they would do is they would cover a bunch of songs, like for like, and put them in a compilation album. And I did that unpaid for like 3 months or something like that.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, like they didn't hire me at the end of it, but um, I from that stemmed this idea, which was, um, I always thought whilst I was doing that, well, why would people listen to the like for like covers? We weren't offering anything extra.
Mhm.
And then around this same sort of time, I found out that, people, because my style typically when I compose music is orchestra based, and I found out that people were writing orchestral music for video games in the same way that they were writing orchestral music for films, like aesthetically. I didn't think I was going to be able to use my orchestral, tropes to score video games. And so once I found out that that was the case, I was like, whoa, 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 this is what I want to do. And so I decided that I was going to start doing, sort of fuse my love of video game music like
Mm.
Zelda and Super Mario, with my sort of love for the orchestra and stuff. And I started this little project called the Marcus Hedges Trend Orchestra, which was essentially orchestral arrangements of these like soundtracks that were the basis of my childhood, and a lot of other people's childhoods as well. Like just one day I was just like, oh, I wonder what it would sound like if I just did a little album of Zelda tracks, and it was such a short album, and I took ages like because I did the album, I worked really hard, and then I was like, oh, I've got to license it. You can't just put it out there, and
Mhm.
um, there wasn't really any platforms available to license cover music, and eventually I got it licensed, and I think like my first, I think like my first sort of month or two in, I got my first paycheck in, and it was 12 quid, and I was like, okay, well,
Woo!
uh, well, but you know what? Like I carried on doing it because I really loved it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed sort of having like a musical interaction with these soundtracks that played such a big part in me growing up, and all these kind
Yeah.
of adventures that I've been on in video games growing up. Um, and eventually, that started to snowball a bit.
Mhm.
Um, and it actually turned out, I mean, so to just sort of give a little bit of put a bit of a number of context to it. Like recently, I think last year I passed about 100 million streams on Spotify.
Wow.
But I've been doing it for like 10 years now, which is
Yeah.
insane to me.
Hmm.
But the reason I'm saying about this is basically because in the end, my first video game project, which was a game called Ari and the Secret of Seasons, the reason I kind of got that gig or got the opportunity was because they were being likened to Zelda quite a lot when they were in development. And I am a huge Zelda fan, especially
Hmm.
Ocarina of Time. And I just done a big Ocarina of Time symphony, like 50 track type deal. And I said, guys, like I I think I could do the music for your game. Like have a look at my cover album. And they're like, oh, okay, do you wanna we like the sound of this. Do you want to pitch for it?
Hmm.
Um and I pitched, and then I got the gig, and the kind of rest is history. That was kind of like my foot in the door
Yeah.
for video games. So sorry if that was a bit rambly, but
No, no,
that's
absolutely. That's great.
yeah, that's sort of that's how I got into it.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like anything really. Once you're in, you're in,
Mm,
and
mm.
like,
I think yeah,
yeah,
go on.
because our industry, it's so small. Everybody knows everybody. So if you
Mm,
shit on one doorstep, that shit
yeah.
goes.
Yeah, I didn't at first I didn't realize, like, I was a little bit late to the Twitter game.
Hmm.
And it was kind of like, once I realized that, oh, it is quite a small group of people, really, and
Yeah.
everybody does know everybody, which I think is really cool,
Hmm.
because we can all celebrate each other's wins, and
Absolutely.
whatnot. But
Absolutely.
yeah, like I did Ari and the Secret Seasons, and um, yeah, then off recommendation,
Hmm.
I got my other gigs, and it's just sort of been chugging along reasonably nicely from there.
Good. With relation to your composing, how did you
Mm,
kind of approach, or do you approach each project completely differently?
um, Not necessarily, actually. So
Hmm.
the way that it's worked for me so far is, I I work closely with the audio lead,
Hmm.
And we sort of just we'll have like a brief at the start. He'll send me a written brief, and within that, it will be, here's what the client likes
Hmm.
musically, like some references. Here's
Yeah.
what we also, just as importantly, what they don't like.
Hmm.
Um, and the kind of thing that they're going for, does it the sort of the mechanics of it, like how long does
Hmm.
it need to be, how many layers does it need to have, does it need to loop, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So that it's not a stab in the dark, right? That's like that you don't want to start doing music and just run in the complete wrong direction.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally. I get you.
but yes, yeah. So I'll ask for everything visually that they have for the game.
Mm.
If I'm lucky enough, that they'll give me a build, and I'll play it as much as I possibly can,
Hmm.
and take a bunch of notes and try and visualize, like, what would I expect here from the music? Like, what does the game want me to feel? Like, is there any sort of
Yeah.
underlining story? And then I'll just, yeah, and then I'll screen record it, whack it into Logic, and start trying to, you know, create something from thin air.
I totally get you because was it last year released Thunked released The Magnificent Truffle Pigs, which is I worked on as a paid gig as a music consultant. So I did very
Oh,
similar to you
fantastic.
with that. Thank you.
Mm,
Um, where my job was I basically started from the very beginning with the script, read the script,
mm.
trying to find out who the characters were, individually, um, and then putting like lots of playlists together, kind of seeing what kind of the sound that you could build for the game because of the story and the characters and the setting and and what
Yeah,
obviously Thumbed
yeah, yeah,
wanted and it was really interesting.
yeah.
So I did some playlists and then I compiled like um kind of portfolios of different composers that I thought that would be really good to work on the game potentially.
Oh, wicked.
Uh,
That's
and
cool.
then they ended up with Kevin Penkin.
Kevin Penkin.
Yeah,
Who can you
he did.
what kind of stuff has he done there?
He's done the game
Forgive me, I don't
Florence
know.
that was nominated for a BAFTA.
Florence.
Hmm.
Hmm, I'm
It's really
Googling.
good. You can play it on like an iPad, iPhones.
Okay. Yeah,
It's
I've not seen this before.
it's
Oh, it's got
fantastic.
amazing reviews.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really
Wow.
fantastic.
Okay. I'll
I've
add that to
met
the old
him.
wish list.
I've met him previously. Oddly, um,
Hmm.
I was doing a panel at EGX in Resd in London, and
Okay.
I gave him a free ticket because we were having drinks afterwards, and
Yeah.
him and Lena Rain came along.
Oh,
So
fantastic. That's
yeah,
cool.
that was kind of cool. I was sat there with like Richard, um, Joris the Man, um, Kevin, and Lena, and we're all just having like a laugh
Yeah.
and some drinks,
Yeah.
and I'm like sitting there going,
Oh,
"Good
great.
Lord,
There's
what
some
am I
really good
doing
music
here?"
makers. There's some really good composers sat right here. Yeah, no,
It was really nice,
absolutely.
and Kenny Young came as well. He came just to be part of the
Oh
crowd,
yeah.
which was nice. Kenny's a
Oh,
lovely, lovely
wicked.
man. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Didn't he did the was it the
Astrobot.
Astro Bot stuff?
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
absolutely love that soundtrack.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely love it.
I've got it on.
In
I
my
went and bought
head
it
for
on vinyl.
days.
Yeah, it's
Did you?
crackers.
Oh,
Yeah, I loved
great.
it. I had to, I had to. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
And then I don't know whether you've got a PS5, but we played Astro's Playroom.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I played that as well. Yeah,
Phenomenal.
yeah.
Phenomenal.
Great. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it as well, being kind of built into the PlayStation, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But it was really enjoyable.
yeah,
Really, and there's not loads of games like that out there where it's quite relaxed and the
yeah.
music's really light-hearted, and
Hmm.
it's just, I don't know, it was just a real nice experience.
Mm. So you've got quite a number of games now under your belt.
Uh, three decent sized games, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and so I did Ari and the Secret Seasons, and that was about a girl who um, was the guardian of winter. Well, her father was originally the guardian of winter,
Hmm.
and she had to take over from him. And she ends up becoming like the guardian of seasons. She can control the seasons.
Hmm.
So it's like a puzzle-based game where she can cast these domes of just winter or
Hmm.
just autumn, and you have to use those to sort of progress through the game. That was a lot of fun, and stylistically, it was, it was quite. I always wanted it to do an orchestral sort of
Yeah.
soundtrack, and it was interestingly like I ended up with not very much time to do that soundtrack,
Hmm.
and um, I think just thinking back to it, I think I did like 35 tracks in like 2 months.
Wow.
We just yeah just had to churn them out, and it was because the I think just like with the publishing and stuff, they were like, right, we need to sort of wrap this up. And yeah, and never forget, like the developer Sev was like, yeah, we need to finish the soundtrack. And I'm like, I've barely started. Like, okay. So it's like a real intense 2 months where I sort of sold my soul, but I was really like, still don't really know how I did it, but
Yeah.
I'm
You
so
just
pleased
push
with
through.
how that comes in. Yeah, you do. You just get it done, don't you? And especially because, I wanted to, I had this whole, because I was on the project for like a year and a half, 2 years.
Wow.
Um, but it was, the game was sort of moving slowly along the
Mhm.
process. And I was like, well, when the game's more fleshed out, because every time they would come back to me, it would be like 6 months later, and I'd be like, well, I'm a different composer. Like now, like we're all growing and like
Yeah.
evolving, and I've got new plugins and um,
New
but
toys.
yeah, exactly, and that approach kind of bit me in the ass a little bit because then I ended up with like not very much time to do the whole soundtrack. But like you say, I sort of pushed on and it all came together in the end, thank God. But yeah, off the back of that one, then I did a game called Override 2, Super Mech
Hmm.
League, which was like very different in it was like, giant anime robots fighting each other for sport. And they
Sounds
wanted
fun.
kind of this. Yeah, it was good fun actually, and quite enjoyable to actually get a build of to be like, right,
Mhm.
like how do we do the music? Um, Interesting as well in approach because there's less of a story there,
Yeah.
like narratively. So
Hmm.
they had this idea where they wanted to do, um, so I did the pitch, right,
Hmm.
and they liked the pitch and they said, what we want to do is that same piece of music, but in, I can't remember now, maybe like 8 different aesthetics. So
Okay.
we have the main theme, but then we have the kind of like the merry-go-round version of it, and we have the beach version of it, and we have
Yeah.
the heavy metal version of it. So it was quite fun to sort of wear many hats. Um, and I quite enjoyed that, especially the surf guitar. Like, got to use some 90s surf guitar. Like that was fun. Um, yeah, and yeah, and then out the other side of that, it was Century Age of Ashes, which was probably the biggest title that
Mm.
I've done yet. With a developer called Playwing. Um, and that I mean that was kind of a dream project for me
Mm.
in terms of the way that I write. It's either sort of very light-hearted Disney type stuff that I write, or it's really crazy big epic.
Hmm.
Fire breathing dragons and swords and stuff is also my bag. So yeah, that was a real fun that was a real fun one to work on.
But it's something that just popped into my head. What
Mm.
would be kind of, or do you even have kind of life goals when it comes to your work? So do you think like maybe in 10 years' time or even less, you think, do you know what, one day I'd love to be composing at Abbey Road or Air Studios or
Mm.
wherever?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So like bucket list type stuff.
Yeah, kind of.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I quite recently was fortunate enough to have a little look round Air Studios.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Um, oh yeah, and
Mm.
I
I spent a
just
day there.
I don't know. Yeah, okay, so you've been round too. It's just
Yeah, I
well,
was there
just
with
we got the tour.
yeah, yeah, it's fabulous.
Go
But
on.
I was there with Gareth Coker doing
Oh,
Ori.
really? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
Honestly, I even
another
think about it
incredible
now, I
soundtrack.
get goosebumps. It was phenomenal.
Really? So
Yeah.
you got to see them actually
Hmm.
recording the Ori stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, what a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
Honestly,
I
there's something like we stood in. You could sit in the booth with them behind you, and they're doing their thing,
mm,
or you could go into
mm.
the actual room and stand there and not breathe,
Yeah,
not breathe.
just too scared to breathe. Like, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. Not breathe and just stand there and you can hear it. It sounds completely different in the room than it does to when you're in the control room. But
Mm.
honestly, I think I left Leeds at about 5:30 in the morning and I got home at about 11:30 that night. But
Oh.
it was wonderful. And it's such a shame because at the end of the day they were like, "Can you come tomorrow?" I was like, "No."
Oh
Go
no,
home.
I have to go all the way back home.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
yeah, I
exhausting,
mean,
but it was so worth it.
I bet. I mean, yeah, I'm very jealous for one that you that
Mm.
that you got to do that. I yeah, just like a friend of a friend was having a little tour around there, and
Mm.
having used the Spitfire samples and stuff over the years, I was like, oh, absolutely, I'd like to go and have a little look around. And it's a really lovely building,
Yeah.
and I don't know,
But
just being in that space and then hearing about all the greats that had been there, like Zimmer
yeah,
and and like people like sort of like Coldplay and Elton John and all that kind of stuff as well. So it was really cool to be in that space.
yeah.
So I think something for me in that day was like I would absolutely love to record there at some
Mhm.
point. That's one of my goals. That and yeah, fingers crossed, right? Same with Abbey Road as well. It's
Yeah. And
you
apparently
get
that's
you
only
get
like
that.
20-minute walk from Air.
It's not, yeah, it's not far, is it? That's what
Mm.
I've heard. I haven't been there myself, but
No. I was I was
I'd love,
actually
I'd love to, I'd love to
yeah.
be, I'd love the reason for me to go there would be the fact that I was recording. Maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe if I'm patient and
I'd actually been invited last year, but I had to
right.
I just changed jobs and it was in the middle of training and they were like, "Oh, it's really important that you do all your training."
Oh,
Mhm.
fine. I suppose you're right.
I know it was frustrating, but it'll happen at some
Yeah.
point. I was invited previously again, but then COVID happened. So.
Yeah, I know. COVID ruining all sorts.
Yeah, and I mean, how did that
Yeah,
kind
and
of impact on you?
yeah, so that's a good question, actually. I think I felt very fortunate in that situation that I built such a big following on with my trend orchestra stuff, with my
Mm,
with my with my covers, because naturally the whole world kind of shut down as far as
yeah.
gigs and projects and stuff like that, right? So
Mm,
I was fortunate in the way that people did continue to use Spotify and iTunes and stuff like that. So I
absolutely.
definitely, yeah, it didn't luckily it didn't affect me too much.
Hmm.
I just sort of buckled down and did more of that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, what about yourself? Like, how did it how
I
did it
was,
affect your stuff?
well, instantly, I remember I was off in the middle of a week for whatever reason, and I just got a phone call from the
Mm,
office saying, "I'm coming around. You're going to get your laptop in half an hour." That was the last time I ever walked into that office. And then,
really?
then in the middle of the pandemic, I get a brand new job,
Yeah.
and we had to go into the office. So that was interesting. To do like
Wow.
online training and stuff. And
Mm,
then That was in November of 21. 20? November 20. And that, yeah, November
One
20.
big blur, isn't it?
Yeah. And then I started that new job, did the training, and then in the January, we were still in the office, and that one day they were just like, "Yeah, yeah, we have to send you all home." I remember being really upset and crying on the way home because I thrive on that kind of personal contact. I go into the
Mm,
office now every day. I'm
yeah.
in a different role now, as of last year, and soon I'll be able to do kind of hybrid working. So, but I'm really not even that bothered.
Mm,
You know, my
yeah.
partner works from home, and quite frankly, I'd be done by murder by the Friday on the first week if I was here. You know, can't do it. You just hear him downstairs.
I don't know, like this is something that I talk about quite often actually. The
Mm,
the the fact that um you know people are like, oh, you work from home all the time, or you get to it, and I'm like, yeah, like
yeah,
it's it's cool, but
but
being locked away like
yeah,
in your little cave or whatever, like we're not supposed to be
no,
like that. We're
we,
supposed to interact with people, and
yeah,
so I have to make a real effort to go and do my extracurricular stuff.
mhm,
Like this, it's the stuff that's kind of good for the soul. I do a
yeah,
lot of jujitsu. I go to the gym a lot. Like they're the things that keep me sane.
yeah. I mean, that's the
It's
thing
it's
because
super important.
yeah, I didn't have anything like that in the first lockdown, and honestly, by the end of it, I
Mm,
was going crackers. The only place I could
yeah.
go was to the supermarket. You know, um,
Mm,
and then on
mm,
a weekend, I would go shopping for my best friend who was isolating, and we would talk on the phone while going around the shop. Do you want this gin? Do
yeah.
you want that gin?
Mm.
Can you get me whatever? And then I'd drop up the food, drop up the stuff, and then we'd go for a socially distanced walk for an hour,
Right.
and that was it.
Right.
That's all I did for about a year. I didn't get to go
Mm,
anywhere. I remember going to a
mm,
gig a couple of years ago. It was the first time I'd been to a gig since COVID, and it was in a really tiny venue called Atma in Manchester, and it's basically like
mhm.
someone's back room or something. And we went to see a guy called Tom Aspel, who's brilliant, by the way. Um, Going to see him again in
Okay.
May. Anyway, and I remember we all had no masks on. I remember us all standing in the room at the very beginning, looking at each other, kind of going, "Well, we're just gonna have to get used to it." And then,
Yeah.
I danced
Yeah.
for 8 hours straight. It was fantastic. I'll tell you a little story about that when the camera isn't rolling because it's hilarious.
Okay. I look forward to that. I look forward to that. Yeah, no, the whole gig scene,
Yeah.
you know, that was a weird one, wasn't it?
Mm.
To sort of transition back into that,
Yeah. Like I don't know
and
whether you've
being
seen.
being being okay with it.
I don't know whether you've seen, or you might be a fan of, Sophie Ellis Baxter. She released a video a year or two ago, for Crying at the Discotheque, and it's her on her own in all the venues that she would have played normally, like, and it's kind of it's a bit sad, you know. I get a bit
Yeah.
teary watching the video because you're like, it's supposed to be
Yeah.
full of people, and they just weren't. Just these
Mm,
empty
mm.
venues, you know,
That's
limping
bizarre,
along in
isn't it?
COVID.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a
Mm.
question for you, and it's kind of one I ask a
Go on.
lot. Um, Kind of to round up the
Ready.
show is in the last 10 years, can you think of a soundtrack, not by you, that you've sat back and listened to and thought, that's amazing?
Ooh. Um,
I know it's a bit
imagine
Rosemary's
if I
Baby.
imagine if I did say me. You know what? My work on no, I'm kidding.
It's bloody brilliant.
Yeah, I just finished. I'm just making sure I'm just double checking that I want this to be the one that I say.
Yeah.
but I've just finished God of War Ragnarok,
Okay.
and um like the soundtrack was just absolutely phenomenal. And I a song in particular
Hmm.
um in it, it's like Blood Upon the Snow, I think it's called.
Hmm.
And it features Hosier. And like that song in particular, I listened to it and it just like hit me like so hard, like on every level. I was like, this
Hmm.
is such an incredible piece of music. Um, I must have listened to it like 10 times in a row.
Mm.
Um, that whole soundtrack, I
Yeah.
absolutely adored. And
Slaps.
it makes obviously, yeah, it's there's a lot of callbacks to obviously the original God of War,
Yeah.
Bear McCreary stuff anyway.
Hmm.
But that soundtrack, the game, story wise, like
Hmm.
all of the kind of the way the narrative goes and the way that the music shows that
I'm mid
was
play,
just
so I'm
super powerful. Are
yeah.
you okay? So
Mhm.
I won't say anything. Um, but
Weirdly about the God of War soundtrack, the Ragnarok, for me, when you turn your machine on and it's just you're on the tile for God of War, that
mm,
beautiful sound that comes out. I sit and listen to
yeah,
that particularly for ages. I love that bit. I'm like, this is my favorite bit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I just, I was thinking to myself, like, I haven't in a, I realized that I hadn't in a while been so like hard hit by a song that I'd heard.
Mm,
But when I listened to that Blood Upon the Snow song, I was like, this is amazing.
hmm.
And I was, when I finished the game, I was like, no, like I want to keep. I did
More.
everything. I like,
Mm,
yeah, like I want more. Like I went because the power of storytelling in that game
mhm.
is so like
I love the fact that I know something is
good.
coming, but nobody
Yeah,
talks about it. No one.
right,
So I'm
right,
looking forward to that.
right. Yes, yes,
Definitely.
yes. You'll have to let when you finished it, let me know how you get on because
Yeah.
I could talk about that forever, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I'm flitting between
Yeah,
that
that
and Elden Ring, which I'm coming up to 300 hours on.
oh, 300 hours. That's impressive. I think I did must have done about I think about 170, 180.
I think,
And then I got distracted by
yeah.
another game. I can't remember what it was.
But it's for me, it's for me and my best friend. We play that because it's kind of like our chill out kind of time. We can enjoy each other's
Mm,
company and kind of, you know, she kicks everybody's
yeah.
ass. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're like, right, we need to do this. Let's
It's
go here, do that, and get this. And yeah.
yeah.
So
There's not I feel like there's not enough of those kind of games where you can do them, sort of co-op like that. The
yeah,
mechanic where you have to summon them in is a little bit heartbreaking. I wish we could just,
diddle around
run
and
around
yeah.
together consistently. Yeah. But that said, like me and my brother played that together pretty
Mm,
consistently.
yeah.
And it's nice that it's not a stressful one really, is it? And
Mm.
you work together. Flip to now when we play Rocket League together, and we're kind of at each other's throats because it's super
Honestly, you should
competitive.
hear how badly we swear. It's terrible. And the
Yeah.
kind of language that we use in the game, if we're fighting a
Mm,
boss fight, it's like, Ray,
yeah.
Ray, he's looking at me. And it's like, it's silly, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're no joke, the bosses in Elden Ring as well. They're no
No.
joke.
So I'm going to ask you a really mean question very briefly, coming up to the very end of the show,
Oof.
is when are we going to hear some stuff?
When you're gonna hear some stuff, what is it?
Yeah.
What is in coming from me?
Yeah.
Um, well, so I have some stuff in the pipeline that
Yeah.
I'm
NDAs. Yeah.
no, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We all
Um,
love a good NDA.
I'm. What can I talk about? I am working on a. Wait, can I talk about this? Yeah, I
Don't
am.
talk.
Yeah, I'm working on I'm working on a little short film,
Have fun.
at the moment, um, which I've posted a little bit about,
Mhm.
which I'm loving, doing. And then as for trend orchestra wise, cover stuff, I just released my Pokemon Yellow album, which was hugely nostalgic for me. But yeah, I have my next one. I have my
Fab.
next one, I think, in my sights. So
Fabulous. So
yeah.
I'm just going to round off and say thank you. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
No, it's been an absolute ball. Thanks for asking me. I appreciate that.
No worries. This is why I love doing this, because it's just so chill.
It is. It is. Yeah, I happily do these. Happily talk about video games and video game music any day of the week.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to you again, Marcus. And hopefully we'll
My
hear something
pleasure.
from you soon. See you. Bye,
Cool.
everybody.
All right, mate.